Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Today, we are doing a truly expansive deep dive into the quiet, complex literary world of William Trevor.
A true master.
Our focus is his celebrated collection of short stories, a bit on the side. And our mission here is to use this whole stack of sources. We've got critical analysis, detailed biography, and these incredible narrative excerpts
Right.
to really locate and examine the hidden architecture of human secrets, the weight of these, delicate truths and that quiet desperation that just absolutely defines his work.
It really does. And he is, without question, the ultimate master chronicler of that interior life. So we aren't here to just, review plot points.
No, not at all.
We are synthesizing what decades of critical insight, his own biography, and the intimate details within these 9 stories tell us about that immense, often unseen emotional weight carried by ordinary people living under pressure.
And the source material is so rich, it gives us this unique opportunity to kind of shortcut our knowledge. We've got widespread critical praise from major journals like The Economist, The Financial Times, a robust background on his life, and crucially, these incredibly detailed narrative segments that let us get right into the minds of his characters.
Exactly.
So this deep dive is going to move beyond just summary and into true literary analysis.
To really appreciate the almost surgical subtlety in Trevor's writing, you first have to understand the environment that shaped him. He was born in 1928.
Right, in Mitchelstown, County Cork, in Ireland.
But the key to his sensibility, I think, is that his childhood wasn't stationary. He spent his formative years just constantly moving around provincial Ireland.
And that detail is crucial, isn't it? That continual movement exposed him early on to this kaleidoscopic view of Irish society. He wasn't trapped in one rigid social structure.
Yeah.
He saw all these various small, tight-knit communities, and each one had its own set of unspoken rules and these deep, simmering tensions. It gave him this almost external anthropological clarity when he was observing people.
Absolutely. He attended Trinity College, Dublin, which gave him a solid intellectual grounding, but then he later made that really significant choice to settle in Devon, England.
Which is so interesting.
It is, because while he remained fiercely an Irish writer in his subject matter, his themes, his whole temperament, physically moving away, seemed to grant him this necessary distance.
Right. He could write about these lives with incredible intimacy, but still maintain this dispassionate, almost cool clarity that makes his observations so penetrating.
Exactly. And his literary recognition over the decades that followed just cemented his position as a foundational, 20th and 21st century writer.
Well, when we look at the list of accolades, it's not just regional, it's a global endorsement of his craft.
Oh, it's evidence of continuous critical adoration that just transcends literary trends. You see the very early recognition, like the Hawthornden Prize for the Old Boys.
And then that extraordinary achievement of winning the Whitbread Fiction Award.
Not just once.
But twice. For The Children of Dinmouth and then Fools of Fortune, that's a testament to sustained excellence across decades.
It really is.
And beyond those major wins, you see this steady stream of high-level recognition. The Yorkshire Post Book of the Year Award for The Silence in the Garden, and crucially, his repeated shortlistings for the Booker Prize.
Yes.
He was there for Reading Turgenev and later for The Story of Lucy Galt.
The shortlistings are, in a way, just as telling as the wins. It suggests that Trevor was always considered the essential writer.
The writer's writer.
Exactly. The one doing the most profound, psychologically acute work, even if he wasn't always the most, fashionable choice of the year. It just confirmed his standing.
And then his career culminates with the 1999 David Cohen British Literature Prize for Lifetime Achievement, and then a knighthood in 2002 for services to literature.
These are markers of a career that really defined the modern short story. Even a later collection, The Hill Bachelors, which explores a lot of the same themes we see in a bit on the side.
Right.
It swept the Macmillan Silver Pen Award and the Irish Times Literature Prize.
And I think it's important to frame the stories in this collection, a bit on the side, within that context of prestige. These weren't just pieces appearing in obscure journals.
Not at all. They were published in incredibly high-profile, sophisticated publications, The New Yorker, The New Statesman, Tatler, The Spectator.
So his detailed, delicate observations were reaching the absolute pinnacle of the literary and intellectual world right from their first appearance.
Right. He was operating at the highest level of craft.
Yeah.
And he was targeting an audience that was prepared to appreciate that kind of subtlety.
Here's where we synthesize the core takeaways on his style, creating that quick mental file for you, the listener, about what a William Trevor story fundamentally is.
Right.
When you gather the critical consensus, what specific language tells us how he achieves his effect?
The critics consistently, and I mean consistently, highlight his focus on the interior and the implied. The Economist gave us the defining phrase. It said he is the great chronicler of tiny, painful nuances.
That word nuance is everything, isn't it?
It is. It tells us that the major dramatic conflict is never external. It's always in that gap between what a character says and what they desperately feel.
How does he manage that stylistically? Because, a chronicler of nuances could easily become tedious, but his work is anything but.
It's a masterclass in craft, and it's often achieved through the use of free, indirect discourse. He allows you, the reader, direct, unmediated access to a character's internal, conflicted thoughts without any heavy-handed narration.
So you aren't just told a character is miserable.
No. You experience the texture of their internal world, the small calculations, the suppressed memories as if they were your own. And this makes you lean in. It forces you to interpret silence and implication.
That deep immersion explains why the Daily Express described the experience of reading him as hypnotic and leavened with a quiet, dark humor. Timeless.
Yes.
That quiet, dark humor is fascinating. It usually emerges from the sheer tragic absurdity of a character's long-term self-imposed suffering.
Exactly. It's the comedy of profound human limitation. For instance, in Sitting with the Dead, the first detail we get, the husband dying 8 days after tidying the stable yard in his coat over his pajamas.
It's so strange.
It's tragically absurd. It signals a domestic eccentricity, a carelessness that implies a deeper contempt or rot in the marriage. But then the doctor has to confirm that this ridiculous act didn't kill him. Trevor uses those domestic, strange details to signal larger emotional truths.
And that unexpected darkness often evokes a kind of grim smile.
It does.
We also see a clear emphasis on emotional truth and craft. Metro praised his nourishing storytelling full of truth. And the Sunday Times offered the most comprehensive definition, which I think we need to break down.
Go for it.
Characteristically assured and subtle. Spotlighting lives entangled in the past and characters who feel out of their element in today's world.
That phrase, out of their element in today's world, speaks directly to his central concern with stasis and historical baggage. So many of his characters are relics. They're trapped by outdated social expectations or geographic isolation or just a history they can't escape.
Right, they're desperately trying to survive contemporary reality while fundamentally belonging to a previous century.
And the critic continues, describing these stories as masterpieces of firmly wrought delicacy, spot-on social observation, and psychological and emotional truth.
Firmly wrought delicacy. That suggests the immense structural strength underpinning all that emotional fragility.
Yeah.
It's not just delicate, it's engineered to be so.
It's precision engineering. The plots are tight, the language is spare, every detail has a purpose. And this synthesis of precision and profound psychological insight is why the Financial Times just succinctly concluded that he is the master of the genre at the top of his game.
He uses the short story form, which demands implication and compression, to excavate these vast internal lives of seemingly small figures.
Yes. We're essentially being given a shortcut to understanding that the highest achievement in this genre is so often found in the quietest voices.
Okay, we're going to dedicate the rest of our time to delving deep into these specific narratives, tracing the common themes of secrets, shame, and resilience across the collection.
And we should remember the connective tissue here. If Trevor is the master chronicler of tiny nuances, then every detail we discuss, a blue dinner plate, a broken banister, a t-shirt, it's all a signal flare pointing toward an immense inner landscape.
Let's begin with Sitting with the Dead, which is a story of emotional purgation and resurrection, but it's disguised as a traditional Irish wake narrative. We meet Emily, whose husband has just died, and the story starts with that tragically absurd image. He died 8 days after tidying the stable yard, wearing just a coat over his pajamas.
That image is so potent, its domestic strangeness used to immediately signal a deeper emotional rot. It speaks to a level of contempt for his health, his life, or maybe for the formality of how one should exist.
And the fact that the doctor confirms it didn't hasten his death is Trevor reminding us that life and death can often be ridiculously arbitrary.
Yes. And the foundation of their entire 23-year marriage was transactional. Emily married him for property.
The 40 acres and the house.
Left by her aunt, Miss Edgell, yes. The husband was a man without religion whose passions were clearly elsewhere, fixated on being a failed horse racer and point-to-points Punchestown races. This utility just defined the marriage and completely suppressed Emily's identity.
And the real drama begins with the arrival of the Garrity sisters, Kathleen and Nora.
Ah, yes, the professional comforters. Well-meaning, slightly invasive, arriving too late to see the ill man, but ready to perform the ritual of sitting with the bereaved.
And they even mentioned they had previously sat with a Methodist minister, Reverend Wolfe. They represent that communal pressure to grieve appropriately.
But their presence becomes the crack through which Emily's true self escapes. To these practical strangers, she releases decades of stored, quiet bitterness.
She confesses her husband was a difficult man who pushed away the food she prepared and sold their dogs.
And crucially, he never overtly abused her. He never called her a worthless woman, but he made sure she saw that judgment in his eyes every single day.
The culmination of this confession is that chilling line that just cuts through all the expected ritualistic grief. She tells them there is no grief in the house.
Monumental. It is the moment she rejects the social expectation that binds a widow to her deceased husband's memory. It's a liberation, but one that can only happen in the dead of night, shared only with strangers who will soon disappear.
And the sisters, to their credit, they'd try to offer comfort, suggesting God took him because he wanted him. But the most profound, synthesized insight of the story comes after they leave at 3:30 a.m.
It's Nora's observation. She looks back and she says, "I'd say, myself, it was the dead we were sitting with."
Wow.
And she isn't talking about the corpse in the house. She means Emily herself. Emily was the one who was spiritually dead, trapped in this financially constrained, loveless marriage. And Nora, the sharp observer, identifies the spiritual cost of that repression.
But the true genius of Trevor lies in what happens next. Emily doesn't dissolve into shame or despair over her confession. She feels calm.
Regrets nothing.
She feels her senses stirring, and she senses the ghosts the night had brought in her own image as she once had been. The death of her husband and the purging of her secret pain to strangers didn't just end her marriage. It resurrected her true, previous self. It's a deeply subversive liberation story.
It is. Trevor demonstrates here that the deepest emotional truths require the removal of the structure that held them in place. In this case, the husband, and the social expectation of mourning, to finally emerge and allow the character to live again.
So the lack of grief is the key to her renewal.
Precise.
If sitting with the dead shows liberation through emotional purging, let's pivot to traditions, which explores a similar concept of silent, persistent rebellion, but this time within the highly structured, almost suffocating environment of a boys' boarding school.
This story immediately sets up the institution's suffocating nature. The boys, 7 of them, Hambros, Forgale, Accrington, Olivier, Macluse, Newcomb, Napier, they participate in this generational tradition of taming jackdaws in a derelict barn.
And the tradition itself is a metaphor for feudal control, right?
Yeah.
The birds only speak in approximate sounds.
Exactly. The boys are attempting to train nature to obey man-made rules just as the school attempts to train them.
And the tradition is violently interrupted. 7 jackdaws are found dead, their necks snap, one head even twisted off.
Horrific.
And the boys, being creatures of tradition themselves, they just immediately default to an easy internal scapegoat. Leggett. They administer a harsh duffing up, leaving him convinced he has a cracked rib, and they assume the violence came from within their own ranks.
But here is where Trevor focuses on the power of quiet observation. The smallest, quietest boy, Olivier, possesses this chilling yet certain insight.
He knows.
He knows the culprit is external to their rigid, boy-centric world. It is the girl, Bella, a dining hall maid, now a woman in late middle age.
Bella is such a fascinating figure. She's defined by silence and mystery now, but she was once celebrated for her fresh beauty. Olivier, the source tells us, connects her silent acts to this whole pattern of previous unsolved campus incidents over the years.
Right, like the middle-of-the-night ringing of the chapel bell.
The theft of a valuable Renoir print and a random deflation of bicycle tires.
These are perfect examples of low-level, repetitive, non-violent acts of deviance, or what the sources call a recidivistic stratagems.
Which, in plain English, means she's the system's quiet, persistent saboteur.
Yes. She enacts defiance without any motive that anyone can understand, purely against the fabric of the institution. She is the living, silent counter-tradition.
That makes the headmaster's role incredibly important. He serves as the voice of the status quo.
He does. He gives this pompous, rambling address, extolling the sanctity of the school's tradition and offering a moral parable about how divine punishment is swift and harsh for deviation.
And Trevor sets up this direct contrast. The headmaster, pompous and convinced that deviation leads to failure. And the maid, Bella, whose consistent, successful deviation is known only to a handful of observers.
And Olivier, who's trying to scan a Horace ode during the sermon, connects these two disparate ideas. He realizes that the headmaster's overwhelming confidence in established rights and the maid's persistent, silent transgressions seem to cling together like proximate jigsaw pieces.
So they're two sides of the same coin of institutional rigidity.
Exactly.
She's not just a disgruntled employee. She's a necessary, almost symbolic figure of resistance. But why does Olivier, the quietest boy, see her when the others don't? Is it empathy or just superior observational skills?
I think Trevor suggests it's superior observation driven by the fact that Olivier himself is slightly out of step with the aggressive jock culture of the school. He's the intellectual observer. He sees that Bella recognizes him as the kind who would know her secret. They share the burden of knowledge, the knowledge that the school's tradition is a brittle facade constantly being chipped away by one silent, overlooked woman.
The insight here is that true rebellion against an institution is often found not in loud, organized protest, but in quiet, anonymous, and even inexplicable acts carried out by those entirely overlooked by the system's power structure.
Let's transition now to stories fundamentally defined by the tension between duty, imposed restraint, and that profound yearning for escape. We can begin with Justina's Priest, which explores vocational escape, or the lack thereof.
The dynamics here are suffocating. You have Justina Casey, whose life is entirely defined by her devotion to the church. She cleans the brasses. And then her sister Maeve, who is just thoroughly exhausted and resentful.
Maeve's burden is laid out so brutally. She's trapped caring for Justina, her ailing father-in-law, Mr. Guilfoyle, and her pub-going, probably useless husband, Mixie.
And she views Justina less as a sister and more as another child she's been forced to mother.
Her sacrifice is the unacknowledged foundation that allows Justina to maintain her pristine religious focus.
The temptation for Justina to leave this closed, exhausting world arrives via letters from her friend Breda Maguire, who's gone to Dublin.
And Breda's descriptions paint the seemingly glamorous life.
Yeah.
Mentions of Davy Burns being part of the racing crowd, the exoticism of a green and blue kimono.
And she encourages Justina to join her, even suggesting she try to get money for the bus fare from the Guilfoyles.
This causes a crisis of faith, not just for Justina, but for Father Clohessy. He's a 54-year-old priest struggling with falling church attendance, a general sense that his vocation is waning in the modern world. Justina's absolute devotion is one of the last remaining constants sustaining him.
His distress is profound because he knows the world Breda represents is real and tempting. The source tells us his anxiety is underscored by the visceral memory of Breda Maguire's T-shirt, which he'd seen before.
Yes.
Reading simply and aggressively.
Fuck me. And the shock of that simple, blunt, secular declaration of liberation stands in terrifying contrast to the confined, crumbling world of his faith and Justina's duty. The modern world is just too loud, too easy.
So Father Clohessy's fear is existential. If the one person most purely devoted to the traditional church structure leaves, what is left of his vocation?
Exactly. Justina's departure would confirm the irreversible failure of his efforts.
In Big Bucks, we see a parallel but purely economic form of desperation. John Michael and Fina share that classic Irish dream of escape to America, fueled by these romanticized images.
Backwin's exaggerated yarns of candy kings and old movie visions of skyscrapers.
Right. Their escape is framed as a total rejection of their current life.
And we understand why they have to reject it. The source material is quite brutal in its description of what they're running from, the fishing village life, and the expectation that John Michael will eventually take over his uncle's farm.
And the detail on the farm is so key to the story's atmosphere. It has no name. The fencing is terrible, it was built without foundations, and it's consumed by mildew and ivy covering the windows.
It's a literal manifestation of toxic, unstable, inherited poverty, a place that actively undermines health and stability.
Their relationship is predicated on this shared trajectory away from this decay.
Right. John Michael goes ahead first, but the reality of the illegal life intervenes. He calls Fina to explain that his planned return for the wedding is impossible. He's working illegally like hawks, he says, and he can't risk re-entry.
So the American dream is revealed to be a precarious, dehumanizing grind.
And the final crushing blow comes later. He calls to say he is returning permanently, but not for romantic reasons. He explains he's coming back to take over that dilapidated remote farm because the illegal life is just too uncertain to expose a wife to.
So the structure of their hope is completely collapsed.
It has. The dream of big bucks dies, and Fina realizes that she doesn't actually love John Michael. She loved the shared ambition, the shared dream of the skyscrapers.
And once the destination reverts to the mildewed, unnamed farm, the foundation of their love vanishes.
Trevor shows us here that for many people trapped by circumstance, love is often a function of shared future possibility, not intrinsic connection.
Now we move to Graylis's legacy, a story about the profound moral weight of memory and the choice to reject financial gain in order to honor his secret.
Right. Graylis is a man caught between two ghosts, his deceased wife and his deceased former lover.
He's introduced as a man of specific provincial routine. He's 59, the branch librarian,
Having previously been a junior at the Munster and Leinster Bank.
and he is driven to a distant town to meet a solicitor, Cliffordy, who, significantly, is wearing a stylish tweed suit and garnet cufflinks. Cliffordy represents that external world of money, status, and legal transaction.
And Graylis's intention is highly unusual. It immediately establishes the moral stakes. He is determined to reject a not inconsiderable sum of money, a substantial legacy left to him by the recently deceased woman, his former lover.
And he only wishes for a small, physical memento, something symbolic. An ashtray with a goldfinch, or the blue-flowered dinner plates he once admired.
The sources reveal the affair was brief. It lasted only 3 seasons. But it was profound. The woman was tall and beautiful, and Graylis, the provincial librarian, used his access to literature to enrich their connection. He introduced her to authors of great emotional and intellectual weight: Proust, Malcolm Lowry, Forster, Elizabeth Bowen.
So their affair was this intellectual and romantic escape from his confined, predictable life.
Exactly. And his attempt to reject the money is an act of purifying the memory of the affair, protecting it from the vulgarity of money. But the conversation with the solicitor forces him to confront his current reality.
And that's when Graylis phones the solicitor again to clarify a seemingly minor but critical detail. He is a widower.
Right. His wife died 3 years ago on an icy road.
This clarification is a deliberate public-facing act. He doesn't want the stylish solicitor to misunderstand his moral standing or assume his wife was alive during the affair. It's an act of honoring his marriage, even in his wife's absence.
And the final decision he reaches is the story's emotional climax. Graylis reflects that by rejecting the money, he honors his wife's memory and, paradoxically, the quiet, secret nature of his love for the deceased woman. If he accepted the money, it would become a transactional fact, a public acknowledgement of the betrayal.
So he concludes he will accept not even an ornament, not the ashtray, not the dinner plates, so as not to cheat reality.
And what he means by cheating reality is allowing the internal spiritual truth of that secret love, a love that existed outside the official record, to be contaminated by a material legal inheritance. His rejection elevates the memory to a purely spiritual plane.
Unadorned and untouchable.
Untouchable by the commercial world represented by Cliffordy. Trevor shows us the high cost of maintaining inner integrity.
It makes you wonder how many people in these stories make a moral choice that actively impoverishes them, but maintains their spiritual coherence. Graylis chooses to be poor in money so that he can be rich in memory.
This next trio of stories explores the agonizing, destructive burden that difficult knowledge, secrets, infidelities, shame places upon the individuals who possess it.
Solitude begins with a devastating childhood trauma. The narrator, at age 7 in London, is the accidental witness to her mother's infidelity.
And the horror is compounded when the lover, the mother's friend, falls down the stairs during the confrontation and dies, splintering the banister. The physical act of the death is tied to the emotional violence of the secret.
The family's response is an overwhelming, tragic sacrifice. The father, an Egyptologist who once saved and scrimped to achieve professional independence, immediately sacrifices his entire ambition, his career, his desire to publish.
They relocate, constantly moving, living in anonymous European hotels, creating what the source calls an artifact within which our existence lies.
That phrase, artifact of existence, let's clarify that. They didn't just move. They essentially erased their past and their potential, creating a perfectly contained, yet completely sterile mobile reality just to shield the child from the memory.
And to protect the mother's reputation. Precisely. They paid the servants, Mrs. Uppsala and Charles, for their silence. The secret was so profound, so morally complex, that it demanded the complete demolition of the family's future and ambition.
And the father's profession, Egyptology, is relevant too, isn't it?
Oh, very. He dedicated his life to digging up and analyzing ancient artifacts, but the secret of his own modern life became the one artifact he had to bury and protect at all costs.
The narrator, now 53, is burdened by the knowledge of this immense sacrifice. She's obsessed with telling the story of her parents' goodness and devotion. She tries to share this profound realization with strangers in railway waiting rooms and parks.
But she consistently fails. People reject her. And why? Because the moral discomfort is just too high. The magnificent story of her parents' sacrifice cannot be separated from the something terrible to tell as well. The infidelity and the death of the lover.
So the terrible truth, even when it leads to great virtue, provokes too much moral discomfort, forcing the narrator into eternal solitary silence. She's born the secret only to discover it's unspeakable.
In Rose Wept, the burden of knowledge is different. It revolves around complicity and gossip.
Right. Rose Dathican, a student, attends tutoring sessions with Mr. Bouverie. During their Thursday meetings, Rose is intimately aware that Bouverie's wife is meeting her lover, Mr. Azam, in a bedroom upstairs. This is the wife's Thursday harvest.
And Rose then commits the secondary betrayal. She gossips about this arrangement, sharing the sordid details with her friends at the Box Tree Cafe. She's a spectator and a disseminator of the secret, positioning herself above the domestic farce.
The tension breaks at a celebratory dinner hosted by Rose's parents for Mr. Bouverie. The tutor, whom Rose had betrayed with her gossip, quietly reveals that he knows everything about the affair, and crucially, that he minds.
He isn't the oblivious cuckold Rose assumed him to be.
And Rose weeps then, but her tears are complex. She weeps for Bouverie's suffering, yes, but also for her own guilt over gossiping. And most importantly, she weeps for the destruction of the modus vivendi.
Wait, let's be clear on that term, modus vivendi. Are we talking about the comfortable lie they all agreed to live within, or is there a deeper meaning here?
It translates roughly as way of living. In this context, it's the quiet arrangement, the system of pretense and mutual blindness that allowed all three adults, Bouverie, his wife, and Azam, to continue their lives, however miserable.
So Rose's knowledge, once shared, destabilized that fragile agreement. Bouverie reveals he minds, which forces an end to the comfortable deceit for everyone involved. Her knowledge forces reality back into the lives of all three players.
That sets up the final title story, a bit on the side, where the burden of knowledge isn't internal or shared with a few, but entirely public.
Right. We follow the long-term affair between an accountant and a divorce secretary.
And she has already sacrificed her stability for him. She divorced her husband, believing in the depth of their connection, but he remains married, refusing to leave his wife.
And the core of their conflict isn't the betrayal itself, but the stage on which it is performed.
Their affair is conducted entirely in public places. Cafes, pubs, parks. They have no sanctuary. This is an explicit choice by Trevor to test the relationship against the judgment of the world.
And the man cannot endure the shame of external perception. The relationship ends devastatingly, not because of a change in his feelings or his wife's discovery.
But because he can't bear it, that strangers, the bagwoman he gives alms to, the barman view his partner only as his bit on the side.
Trevor demonstrates here that for characters steeped in, provincial Irish Catholicism or conservative societal expectations, social perception and the accompanying shame are greater, more destructive forces than genuine romantic devotion.
So the appearance of morality ultimately trumps the reality of his own emotions.
Our final thematic pairing brings together failure and transcendence, the failure of earthly life and the enduring power of internalized beauty and faith. We start with sacred statues.
Corey is a sculptor who possesses what the story presents as a divine, sacred gift-carving saints like Saint Bridget and the Stations of the Cross. His wife, Nuala, sees his art as a true, holy vocation.
The profound tragedy is that this sacred vocation cannot provide a living. The couple is driven to indigence by poverty and another impending pregnancy.
And Nuala, seeing her husband's spiritual worth failing against this brutal economic reality, visits Eddie Rynn, a childless woman who runs a shop and petrol station.
This scene is agonizing in its desperate practicality. Nuala proposes a terrible solution. She will give the Rynns her baby for a confidential sum of money. This proposed sin is born entirely from necessary, crushing poverty.
And Eddie Rynn is rightly horrified. She refuses, immediately terrified of the social ruin and legal danger such as secret black market transaction would bring.
Her refusal is motivated less by moral disgust and more by fear of social exposure, a classic Trevor move.
With that final, desperate hope exhausted, Corey is forced to face the secular world. He rejects an offer of cutting headstone letters and instead takes menial, soul-crushing work on the roads.
Nuala keeps her proposed sin secret, but she finds a profound, almost mystical sense of resignation in contemplating her husband's tranquil, finished statues. She concludes that the world, not she, had failed.
So her faith in his sacred art, the transcendent beauty of his vocation, survives the total collapse of their economic reality.
Trevor suggests that the worth of a life is found in its interior spiritual purpose, not its ability to function in the marketplace.
That idea of finding an inner sanctuary leads perfectly to the dancing master's music, which offers a different form of enduring, transcendent beauty. We meet Bridget, the scullery maid at Scanakilla House, whose life is defined by scrubbing, chores, and the rigid reality of the servant class.
Into this harsh routine arrives the visiting Italian dancing master, small, thin, with black hair and lemon-scented oil. He represents culture, sophistication, and a world entirely foreign to Bridget's reality.
As a courtesy, the family invites the servants to the drawing room for a recital.
For Bridget, this is not just entertainment, it's an overwhelming aesthetic revelation. She's led into the drawing room, the scarlet walls, the portraits, the encrusted ceiling, a sensory overload that stands in complete contrast to the scullery.
And the music itself is described in these evocative, complex terms: scurried, hurried, calm like a thrush or thunder.
This music transcends her material reality, offering her a profound, instantaneous experience of beauty that she has never had access to before.
And this musical memory becomes her permanent, internalized source of peace, happiness, and beauty. It kept faith with her throughout her long life, long after Scanakilla House declines. The trees are felled, the roof slates are gone.
The music becomes an enduring ghost for the place, providing a personal, untouched sanctuary that no social failure or economic collapse can penetrate.
It's the perfect counterpoint to the entire collection. While so many characters are crushed by external judgment and economic constraints, Trevor leaves us with the profound truth that the deepest, most beautiful experiences are often internal, portable, and entirely free from the world's corruption.
It's beautiful.
So if we synthesize all these threads, what William Trevor gives us is a literary map of the immense, unseen weight carried by the human spirit. We saw that constant opposition between true knowledge and, well, comfortable illusion.
Absolutely. Think of Olivier's lonely, certain knowledge of Bella's silent rebellion contrasted with the school's blissful, pompous ignorance.
Or Graylus's deliberate choice to bury his painful truth to honor a memory, versus Rose's guilt after possessing the terrible truth and shattering the modus vivendi for everyone involved.
And the collection is full of characters trying desperately to escape their physical circumstances. John Michael and Fina's flight for big bucks, Justina dreaming of Bretta's Dublin liberation.
But far more often, we see Trevor's characters escaping into these quiet, durable inner worlds.
Yes. Bridget's music, Nuala's retreat into the tranquil faces of Corey's sacred statues, and Emily's calm after purging her pain.
So what does this all mean?
I think William Trevor focuses our attention on the immense, unseen stakes of these small domestic human dramas. Existence, he shows us, is defined far more by small, internal acts of kindness. The Garrity's sitting with Emily, the parents' complete self-demolition in solitude.
And quiet cruelties. Emily's husband, Corey's crushing poverty.
Than by any grand, sweeping historical event. His characters live lives so profound and heavy on the inside that their external actions are often just mere echoes of their internal turmoil. He confirms that the deepest theater of life is performed in the silence of the kitchen, not on a stage.
As you reflect on these delicate, wrought truths, consider the nature of secrets in these stories. Is it better, like Graylus, to bury a painful truth about love or loss, to preserve an honoring spiritual memory?
Or does the suppression of a secret inevitably become a heavier, more distorting burden than the truth itself, as the narrator in Solitude discovered, when her inability to share the secret ultimately overshadowed the great sacrifice it inspired?
Think about that final provocative thought. What quiet, unseen burden in your own life is defining your existence today? And which mask are you wearing to face the world tomorrow to maintain your own carefully constructed reality?
The silence, Trevor reminds us, is often the loudest part of the story.